Sullivan, 71, was a former Marine who had completed 3 tours in Fallujah. These days, he lived alone in a modest apartment with his aging dog, Bravo. Bravo wasn't just any pet. He had been a military working dog, trained specifically to sniff out explosives. During a crucial mission in 2005, Bravo had saved 4 Marines by detecting a hidden IED network that could have wiped out their entire patrol. After the war, regulations mandated that military dogs either remain in service or be adopted by handlers with suitable facilities. But Frank had pulled strings, called in favors, and filled out endless paperwork to make sure Bravo came home with him. "We went in together," he told his commanding officer. "We come out together." Now Bravo was elderly. His muzzle was gray, his eyes clouded with cataracts, and his hearing nearly gone. Still, Frank never once considered leaving him behind. Their bond had been forged in combat, through fire and blood, stronger than age or convenience. Each morning, Frank would walk Bravo to the local park. They always sat on the same bench. Frank would read a book while murmuring softly to Bravo, as if the dog understood every word. He'd talk about the weather, recall their deployments, or just offer comfort when Bravo looked unsettled. "Remember that sandstorm outside Ramadi?" Frank would say in a low voice. "Couldn't see more than 3 feet ahead, but you stayed on track, never hesitated, never lost your nerve." On Tuesday, a group of young men spotted Frank having a one-sided talk with his dog. They chuckled, then pulled out their phones to record. "Get this," one said to the others. "Old guy thinks his dog talks back." They filmed several minutes of Frank bending down, speaking softly to Bravo, occasionally pausing like he was waiting for a reply. Within the hour, the video hit the internet under the title, "Crazy Old Vet Thinks Dog Understands Him." The park supervisor, concerned by the disturbance, approached Frank later that day. "Mr. Sullivan, we've had a few complaints about you speaking aloud to yourself. It's making some park visitors uneasy." "I'm talking to my dog," Frank said evenly. "Yes, well," the supervisor added uncomfortably, "maybe that's something better done at home. Some parents are worried about their kids seeing strange behavior." Frank gave a quiet nod. He'd faced worse than awkward glances. As he slowly packed up his things, Bravo struggled to stand, arthritis making each move stiff, but still the dog insisted on following his human. "It's okay, boy," Frank whispered, gently rubbing Bravo's aging head. "Let them laugh. You're the only one who never left my side when the shells were dropping." Bravo nudged Frank's hand with his snout, a sign of affection unchanged over time. Together they moved slowly toward the gate, the young men's laughter fading behind. "If you think good people should be remembered, stay with us." 2 weeks after the park episode, Frank was served an eviction notice from his veteran-assisted housing unit. The notice claimed unauthorized animal ownership and missing documentation of service status. Frank had turned in the forms 3 times, but red tape moved slowly, and Bravo's mission files were sealed under classified deployments. Each appeal was lost in endless paperwork. With no relatives to call and only a small pension barely enough for basics, Frank sold what little he had and bought a worn-out RV. He parked near the lake where he and Bravo once trained before deployment, a place that felt more like home than any rented space. Every day they circled the lake, Frank keeping pace with Bravo's increasingly slow and shaky steps. The dog's health was fading, but his faith never did. One frigid morning, Bravo collapsed, his body racked by seizures. Frank scooped the dog into his arms and raced to the nearest animal clinic, fear choking his voice. "Please," he pleaded with the front desk. "He needs help now. I don't have much money, but I'll work it off. Anything." The young woman barely glanced up from her computer. "We don't offer charitable services. There's a shelter across town that provides more affordable euthanasia." "If that's what you're after." "Euthanasia?" Frank's voice wavered. "I'm not trying to end his life. I want to help him, sir. All treatment requires payment in advance. It's our policy." Frank settled into the waiting area, clutching Bravo's shivering body. He didn't cry. He had long since learned to bury pain, but his calloused hands brushed the dog's fur in soft, steady strokes. A teen loitering near the clinic recognized Frank from the viral clip, which now had thousands of cruel comments. The boy secretly recorded, another video dog whisperer, still venting to his furry therapist. By nightfall, fresh memes were making rounds online when your only pal has 4 legs and the loony vet thinks Rover gets war flashbacks. Frank paid no attention. He carried Bravo back to their RV, swaddling the dog in his own coat and staying up through the night to watch his breathing. He crushed his own pain pills into Bravo's water, putting the dog's comfort before his own joint pain. "Stay with me, buddy," he murmured. "We've been through worse. Remember those nights outside Fallujah? You kept me warm? Then my turn next." What none of the critics picked up on was the tag still hanging from Bravo's faded collar. It wasn't your standard dog tag, but a military ID K9. USMC 4521, credited with saving 4 lives, honored with a Purple Heart. Even fewer would grasp what it meant that Frank still called Bravo by his rank. "Easy, Corporal, stay calm." Now, to Frank, Bravo wasn't just a pet. He was a fellow Marine who'd never been officially relieved of duty the next day. Frank spent the last of his pension on antibiotics from a kind-hearted clerk at a feed store. It wasn't official vet care, but it was all he could afford as Bravo's health declined. Frank stayed beside him, reading aloud from well-worn paperbacks, just like he had during storms that reminded them too much of gunfire. A jogger passed and noticed the elderly man outside his RV talking gently to what looked like a very ill dog. Instead of stopping, she picked up her pace and mumbled about that odd homeless vet Frank heard, but stayed quiet. He'd long since stopped expecting regular folks to get it. The only judgment that mattered to him lay wheezing beside him, fighting for every breath. How do you feel seeing a man who once served treated like this type unfair if your heart aches too? 3 hours after the second video began trending, an unmarked black SUV bearing government plates rolled up near Frank's RV. The vehicle halted with precision, its engine going quiet with military-like efficiency. 5 Marines in dress uniforms stepped out, moving with a synchronicity that comes only from years of discipline. Their expressions were solemn, their purpose clear as they approached Frank's modest home. The eldest among them, a master sergeant, adorned with rows of combat ribbons, knocked firmly on the RV door. "Mr. Frank Sullivan?" Frank opened the door, one arm still holding Bravo, who was now too frail to stand. A look of confusion passed over his face at the sight of the uniformed men. "Sir," said the Master Sergeant, offering a flawless salute, "I'm Master Sergeant Reynolds. These are Lieutenant Harris, Corporal Martinez, Lance Corporal Wilson, and Private First Class Dawson." Frank instinctively returned the salute, an old reflex from decades past. "Sir," Lieutenant Harris added, stepping forward, "Bravo rescued me from a compound in Ramadi when my unit was trapped, and you, despite regulations that would have separated you, stood by him. Now it's our turn to ensure neither of you is left behind." All 5 Marines saluted again, this time aiming the gesture equally at Frank and Bravo. "We're here to take you both to the Naval Veterinary Hospital in Bethesda. Bravo's been reinstated to honorary service under the Battle Buddies Forever initiative. Full medical treatment has been approved." Frank's rugged face stayed composed, but his eyes shimmered with emotion. "Bravo can barely move. He might not—" "Sir," Corporal Martinez gently interrupted, "we're prepared for that." From the SUV, they brought out a special stretcher designed for canine patients. With careful, practiced movements, they helped Frank transfer Bravo, securing the aging dog with straps that were firm but gentle. "The people who posted those videos," Frank began tentatively. "They're being dealt with, sir," Master Sergeant Reynolds said firmly. "The Commandant viewed the footage this morning. He had strong words about honoring those who served, including our 4-legged warriors." As the procession moved to the SUV, news crews arrived. Reynolds blocked the cameras. "This isn't for publicity. It's about doing right by one of our own." One determined reporter captured the event but respected the Marines' request for distance. Her article, published the next morning, carried the headline, "Dogs Can't Speak, but 5 Marines Answered a Silent Call." At the veterinary hospital, Bravo received 24/7 attention from geriatric canine specialists. The young man who had posted the mocking clips later gave a public apology after his ROTC commanding officer made the connection. "I didn't get it," he admitted, visibly shaken. "I thought it was just an old guy with a dog." I didn't know Bravo was a decorated military canine. I didn't understand their bond. Meanwhile, veterans from 3 surrounding states pulled together resources and contacts. Within days, they secured a small mortgage-free house for Frank through a veterans program. It was situated near a lakeside with walking trails ideal for Bravo's needs. The Homeowners Association, which typically restricted pets, voted unanimously to make an exception after hearing their story. 2 weeks later, once Bravo's condition stabilized enough for discharge, the hospital arranged a formal ceremony. The dog, once dismissed as just an old man's companion, was finally honored with the Canine Service Medal. Approved years ago but never awarded. Frank stood tall as he accepted the medal on Bravo's behalf, the dog sitting alertly despite age and ailments. A military photographer captured the moment. As if sensing the importance, Bravo lifted his paw in what looked remarkably like a salute. As they readied to leave for their new home, the original 5 Marines returned, now joined by dozens more veterans from multiple wars spanning generations. They lined up in 2 straight rows, forming a ceremonial path from the hospital entrance to the waiting vehicle. As Frank walked between them, Bravo trotting beside him with renewed strength, every Marine saluted. Not just the man, but the loyal dog who had earned his place through bravery and devotion. Semper Fidelis, Master Sergeant Reynolds murmured as they passed. Always faithful, both of you. The right decision when others turned away your story is important too. Each morning from then on, Frank would sit on the porch of his new house reading aloud to Bravo, just like before. But now those walking by didn't laugh or rush off. Instead, they gave respectful nods, some even stopping to offer a quiet hello. The neighborhood kids, once warned to steer clear of that odd man, now asked if they could visit Frank. Welcomed them kindly, teaching them how to approach Bravo without alarming him. "Is your dog a superhero?" one little boy asked with wide eyes. Frank smiled, an honest smile rarely seen before. "No, kid, he's just a Marine. Like me." The nearby elementary school invited Frank and Bravo for Veterans Day. Frank turned down speaking, but agreed to be there. He sat calmly at the back while Bravo, wearing his duty vest, accepted soft pats from children who now realized that heroes take many shapes. A small bronze marker appeared at the park where Frank had once faced ridicule, placed without ceremony, yet clearly visible, honoring the duty of military working dogs and their partners' loyalty beyond words. The last video to spread online showed a very different moment than the first. It featured Frank and Bravo beside the lake, at dusk, outlined by the fading glow. A group of active Marines had come to see him, and one recorded the moment when, with no prompting, they all grew silent as Bravo lifted his head toward the sunset and howled a sound both grieving and proud. The veterans present knew it was a cry of memory. Frank's hand rested on Bravo's back, firm and steady. No words were needed anymore. Some stories don't need applause. Just the quiet recognition that something was given, that service was done, and sometimes an old dog and a weathered man sitting together in silence remind a whole generation what it means to stand by honor long after the fight is over. Have you ever seen loyalty taken for granted? Tell us your story, it should be honored too. Subscribe for incredible stories where we protect meaningful memories, so future generations always remember. Real people don't talk to dogs, you crazy old man. Frank sat still on the park bench, softly speaking to the old dog. Resting on his lap, a group of guys burst into laughter. One of them filmed the moment this lonely vet is chatting away with his dog. They had no clue. 3 hours later, a black SUV rolled up without a sound. 5 Marines stepped out and confidently approached the old man, and all saluted him together, in perfect sync. Type 1. If you believe loyalty goes beyond just human bonds,